Hello everybody and welcome back to Gaming on Caffeine. My name is Isaac and we are back for episode 14 of FTB Infinity Evolved Skyblock. Last episode we set up the thermal centrifuge over here, which is now turning all of our crushed uranium into normal uranium, tiny piles of uranium, as well as a little bit of stone dust. And basically since the end of last episode, I've just been occasionally taking all of the uranium out of here and sticking it into some of the new storage drawers that we have over here. As far as the stone dust goes, I've really just been throwing this into the void because we don't have any use for it right now, and I don't think there's any use for it in the future either. But what I want to work on in today's episode is I want to work on putting this uranium to use, and we're going to do that by building a nuclear reactor from Industrial Craft 2. Now, I've done a little bit of work off camera trying to get some resources to make this a little bit easier to craft, but basically the way that we make ourselves the center of the nuclear reactor from Industrial Craft 2 is with 3 of these reactor chambers, 4 of these dense lead plates, 1 generator, which we actually did pick up last episode with a pickaxe. I thought it was going to break, but it didn't. And we also need another one of those advanced circuits that we made last episode. And so, like I said, I've got quite a lot of the stuff we need to make this already lying around. For example, we've got all of the dense lead plates over here, so we can take all of those. As far as the reactor chambers go, for these, we need 4 lead plates and 1 basic machine casing. The basic machine casing, of course, being a bunch of iron plates and 1 iron chipset. So, if we come over to here, another thing I've done since the end of last episode is get a bunch more of these iron plates, as well as quite a bit of lead plates. And I've also had my assembly table here running for quite some time. We now have 57 of these iron chipsets, as well as quite a lot of these redstone chipsets. And I should also point out that I have now upgraded all of my steam dynamos back here to contain the augment that doubles the amount of power that they can produce. So all of these are now capable of producing up to 160 redstone flux per tick, which means that for all of these machines over here, we are kind of bottlenecked by this hardened energy cell, but mostly it's for these lasers over here, because right now you'll notice that everything is full on power. This thing's full on power. All of the steam dynamos are not really producing that much power, but once we have all of these lasers online actually crafting stuff, the system requires like an extra 440 redstone flux per tick, and that's when all of those extra upgrades come in to kind of keep this thing running at full speed and as fast as possible. But back over here, back to the nuclear reactor. To make the reactor chambers, it is super easy. We're just going to go ahead and I'm going to make 2 of those. Actually, we're going to need a few more. Let me just grab a few more of these iron chipsets here, because we are going to need quite a few of these throughout the course of today's episode, mostly to make a bunch of these basic machine casings. And once we've got those, all we need now is the advanced circuit. Again, I have pretty much everything, I think, for the advanced circuit ready to go. Yeah, we got the circuit boards over here in the carpenter, and we have the redstone chipsets over here in the assembly table chest. So if we combine all that together, that should get us the advanced circuit like so. And then once that's done, all we need is the generator, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, I put over here in one of these chests. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, it's up here. We'll take you. And once we've got that, I think that's everything to make the center core block of the reactor. Once we've got the 3 reactor blocks required for the middle, I'm also going to go ahead and make 4 more of these to go around the outside of the reactor. And I'll kind of show you this in a second if you've never set up an Industrial Craft 2 big reactor before, but you can kind of upgrade it by adding more reactor chambers to the reactor. But at the core of it, you do need this nuclear reactor here, and if we do something like that, we have everything it takes to make the nuclear reactor. Nice. So now I have built this little platform. You probably noticed it when I was throwing the stone off the edge, that comes all the way out here, and this is where our nuclear reactor is going to go. Because if you're not aware, if you set up a nuclear reactor incorrectly, if you set it up wrong, it has too much uranium in it, or it's not dispersing enough heat, it will explode. And the explosion is very, very big. I'm not even sure if this is far enough away for my stuff to not get broken. I think it might be, but I might have to move it a little bit further back, or maybe even just put up some like protective walling between the reactors and my base. But basically, the way that this looks is we're going to have a normal reactor chamber block at the bottom like so. We're going to have, oh, you can't put those down without the reactor. Ooh, okay, so let me quickly run back and grab a piece of cobblestone. I thought I was going to be able to put the reactor down on the floor and then put this down on top of it, but apparently that is not the case. I'm going to need at least a block to put the reactor on. But the basic setup is that the nuclear reactor goes in the middle, and then on all of the sides of the reactor, we have one of these reactor chambers. So I'm a few reactor chambers short, but if we do something like this, we'll put one right about there. We'll put the nuclear reactor in the middle, and then on all the sides, we will put these reactor chambers like so. And if we look inside here, you'll see that almost all of these slots are now open, apart from these N2. These N2 will unlock when we put one on the top and on the bottom here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this block at the bottom. Let's quickly run back and get ourselves those last 2 reactor chambers. And there we go. That is a fully built nuclear reactor. You don't have to have all of the blocks around it. I think if you just have the reactor on its own, you get access to these first 2 lines in the nuclear reactor, and then the more that you add on, you get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It might be 3. You might get the first 3, and then you get 1 line extra for every one of these that you add on. But basically, the more chambers that you add, the more uranium that you can put into the reactor, therefore the more power you get. And most importantly for us, we get more depleted uranium cells back. So the main reason why I'm building this nuclear reactor is not for its power output, because like I said before, in today's episode, we're not really struggling for power right now. Our power situation is actually really good, and we can transfer all of our redstone flux power into Industrial Craft 2 EU power and use it to power all these machines just fine. The reason why I'm doing it is because, again, if we look back at that recipe for the Applied Energistics 2 wrench, the way that we get that is with the enriched Solarium alloy, and to make that, we need iridium ore, and to get it, we need MOX fuel, and to get the MOX fuel, we need plutonium. We've got the uranium, we just need the plutonium, and the way that we get plutonium is by crafting tiny piles of plutonium into normal plutonium, and tiny piles of plutonium are obtained by putting depleted uranium fuel rods through a thermal centrifuge. So we need to make uranium fuel rods, put them into the nuclear reactor, leave them for a good couple of hours until they have used up all of their uranium, they are depleted, and then we can take those depleted uranium fuel rods, put them through the thermal centrifuge, and we will get a tiny amount of plutonium, which we can then use to start crafting some of those iridium plates, which we can then use to create this quartz wrench, which we can then use to start with a little bit of applied energistics. So, like I just said there, the next thing that we are going to need is to make ourselves some uranium fuel rods. So if we look at the recipe for a uranium fuel rod, you'll see that we need to get some enriched uranium nuclear fuel and an empty fuel rod into a canning machine, and that will get us the uranium fuel rod that we need for our nuclear reactor. So starting with the enriched uranium, right now our uranium that we have is not enriched. The way that we make it enriched is by crafting normal uranium with some tiny piles of uranium here. We already have both of those in our storage drawers to my left, so that's fine. The empty fuel rods we can get by putting these iron plates through the metal former in extruding mode. So if we come over again to our metal former, make sure it's in extruding mode, which is this one here, and stick the iron plates in. That's going to get us some empty fuel rods. And then finally, we of course need the machine that we're going to do it all in, and that is the canning machine. And again, thankfully the recipe for the canning machine is not too hard whatsoever. It's just 2 of these tin cans here. These are made by putting the tin item casing through the metal former. We then need 2 of these electronic circuits, which we've made a million times before, as well as another basic machine casing, which we have in abundance. So the only hard bit is this tin can here, which, like I said, is just some of these tin item casings, which we do need to quickly grab. You probably noticed I did have quite a lot of tin plates over here as well. So we take 2 of those. That should get us 4 item casing, which is going to get us 4 of those tin cans, which is more than enough. And so what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to go away, I'm going to craft all this stuff up, and I'll be back in a second. And a little while later, we now have ourselves a canning machine. Nice. So we can take this and we can put it down pretty much anywhere we like. I'm going to put it down right there for now, just so they can use all the power from the bat box here going through the industrial copper cable. And now if we were to put in the fuel rods as well as some enriched uranium, it should start canning that up into some uranium fuel rods. I don't think that the bat box is currently outputting power in its current state. I might as well just take all of those. And you'll see right now the bat box has like this white dot on the front here. I think that it can only output power from that front dot right there. So what I think we might have to do is make another one of these copper cables, or another 2 of these copper cables, and have it go around the front to connect up. I'm not quite sure, but let me try this real quick. We'll put you in there. We'll take 2 more of those, and we'll put those down like so and like so. Does that start filling up with power? It does, and that is going to start to make some of the uranium fuel rods. Again, these are radioactive, so if you're going to make them, make sure you're wearing the hazmat suit here so that you don't die of radiation. But we're not going to take these just yet, because if we put these into the reactor right now, the reactor would explode, because there is no way for the reactor to dissipate all the heat that is generated from the uranium fuel rods, and that is where the heat vent comes in. Now, there are a lot of different types of heat vent and a lot of different ways that you can disperse heat from a nuclear reactor within Industrial Craft 2. I'm going to stick with the very basic way of setting it up, because I'm not too sure on how all of the heat exchangers work and how some of the higher level overclocked heat vents and stuff work like that. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a 1-to-1 ratio of heat vents and uranium fuel rods, which basically means over here in our reactor, we're going to have, I think it's 27 uranium fuel rods and 27 basic heat vents at any given time, so that all the heat vents are dispersing all of the energy from all of the uranium fuel rods. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away now and make 27 of these heat vents, because again, they're a bit of a pain to make. They require a ton of iron. We need 27 of these. Each one requires 4 iron bars, 4 plates, as well as one of these electronic motors. motors. We made a bunch of these last episode. It's a bunch of copper coils, a bunch of tin item casing, and an iron ingot. So again, a bunch of time buying the metal farmer. And so I'm going to go away. I'm going to make 27 of those so you'd have to watch me do it. And I'll be back in a second. And way too long later, we now have 27 of these heat vents inside the nuclear reactor. Again, you want to make sure you put these in beforehand, otherwise it will explode. But we also have more than 27 of these fuel rods as well. So, if we do something like this, and then quickly grab ourselves a lever and turn this thing on, it should start to produce some EU and generate some power, and hopefully won't explode on us either. It shouldn't. I have done some testing in a single-player world, and this setup here shouldn't explode, but there is always the possibility that it will. And here we go. Now we've got ourselves a lever, we can stick that on there, turn it on, and it didn't explode. It's now generating 135 EU per tick, which I think is about equivalent to about 500 redstone flux per tick. You multiply it by 4 to get from EU to RF, or divide by 4 to get from RF to EU, and all of these uranium fuel cells will very slowly start to deplete until they become depleted uranium fuel cells. You'll see on the end there, the idea of the uranium fuel rod there is changing as it depletes, and I think it takes about 5 hours, the wiki said, for these to actually fully deplete. I haven't tested it fully in Feed the Beast Infinity Evolved Skyblock, so it may have been tweaked, it may have been changed in the configs, so don't quote me on that, but that is now working, and when that is done, we'll be able to process all 27 of those depleted uranium fuel rods into some plutonium, and then use those tiny pieces of plutonium to make ourselves 3 pieces of normal plutonium, and then use that plutonium to make ourselves some iridium plates, and we'll be well on our way to starting with applied energistics. Speaking of which, whilst we're waiting for all of those uranium fuel cells to deplete so that we can get ourselves some of that iridium ore, we can take a look at the rest of the items that we need to make these enriched Solarium alloys. Starting with the enriched Solarium, to make this, we need 8 of this irradiant uranium as well as 1 Solarium. Thankfully, this irradiant uranium is super easy to make. I say super easy. It does require 100,000 per ingot, and we do need quite a few of the ingots, but in terms of how it's actually made, it is super easy to make. All we need to do is get some of these uranium ingots, which we can get by putting our uranium into the compressor, like so. All we need to do is grab the uranium that we're getting from sifting sand, this crushed uranium, and stick it through our industrial craft compressor. Then we'll turn it into ingots, and then if we grab some of the glowstone that we've been getting from all of our dust sifting, I think, possibly. We can use that. We can combine both of those. I'll actually grab quite a lot of this glowstone so we can do a full stack of those ingots at once. We'll stick all of those into the assembly table, and that's going to start crafting us these irradiant uranium. And now that that's done, the next bit is probably one of the harder bits, and that is making the Solarium. So we can either craft this from 9 pieces of Solarium, or we can put a piece of glowstone through a molecular transformer with 9 million EU, and that will get us the Solarium. And for those who are wondering, the tiny pieces of Solarium here are made in exactly the same way, but you make the 9 pieces individually. It still requires the same amount of power, still requires 9 million EU in total. It's just done all separately, so we're going to do it in the block form. We're going to do them all individually, and to do that, we of course need to start by getting ourselves the molecular transformer. This guy is another one of those recipes that we have all of the ingredients to make, but is a pain to make because of all of the hammering and extruding and plates and wires and item casing that we need in order to make this thing. So we need 4 of these advanced machine casing. We made these before. I think we made it for the thermal centrifuge, possibly. But for this, we just need some steel plates. We've got a bunch of steel. Carbon plates are basically just coal. Advanced alloys are just iron, tin, and bronze plates compressed. The only new thing about this molecular transformer is this empty core in the center. This requires a thick neutron reactor to make this. We need some neutron reflectors and some copper plates. For that, we need coal dust, copper, and iron dust. Like I said, all really easy stuff. It's just a really long crafting chain to get where we need to be. For the iridiant glass, we need some of that iridiant uranium that we just started crafting, as well as some reinforced glass, which is more advanced alloys, and some glass. And then we need these guys here, the EV transformers, which are more advanced circuits, some insulated HV cable, which is just iron cable with a lot of rubber, and it's just a lot of stuff like that that requires a lot of time to make. And so what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to go away, I'm going to get all the stuff that we need to make this molecular transformer, and I'll be back in a second. And again, a really long time later, I cannot emphasize enough how much of a grind it is to make this molecular transformer, but we now have what it takes to make these 2 EV transformers. If we put both of these in like so, that gets us both of those, and now all we need to do is put all of that stuff together, and we should have ourselves a molecular transformer. So we'll put these up there, we'll put the empty core in the middle. I think some of my stuff, I did have to make this chest, just because I had so much stuff that I needed to be using, and I didn't want to have to spread it all out and put it into all those chests over there. But if we come back over here, we've got our advanced machine casings. Let's bring those back over, stick those in the corners, and then fill the middles in here with these advanced circuits. And there we go. We got ourselves the molecular assembler. Nice. I did have to make one more machine to get this thing because we didn't have any machine that could make lapis dust. To make the lapotron crystals, this lapis lazuli dust here, can only be made either in the macerator or in the sag mill or the crusher. We don't have the sag mill, the crusher, or the macerator, or we didn't have it. And so I made the macerator simply because it was the easiest one of those three to make. It's really easy to make. If I show you the recipe here real quick, macerator, this thing is 3 crushed obsidian, 2 cobblestone, 1 basic machine casing, and 1 electronic circuit. And it basically acts like a pulverizer or a sag mill or a crusher. I'm quite surprised you can't make lapis lazuli dust in the pulverizer. Seems a little bit weird, but you can do it in the macerator. And like I said, it's fairly easy to make. So I made that, stuck it in a bit of a weird place, but it works. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my molecular transformer, I think, about here. Now, you may be thinking, that's a long way away from the power of the Industrial Craft 2 reactor. By the way, I am going to use the power of the Industrial Craft 2 reactor to power this thing, because I don't want it draining my power over here, and I kind of want to put the power from the reactor to good use. But, like I've said before, the reactor does have the potential to explode, and like I said, this thing is a pain in the backside to make, and so I would really appreciate it if it didn't explode. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some glass fiber cable, which is basically, I think, the highest tier cable in Industrial Craft 2, and transfer the power from the nuclear reactor over and into my molecular transformer here. The reason that I've chose to use the glass fiber cable over some of the other cable, I don't think you can use normal insulated copper cable on the nuclear reactor. I think it just burns out the cable, so that would just like be a waste. As far as other cable, there is HV cable, which is this stuff here, which can transfer up to 248 EU per tick, but I'm fairly certain that all cable apart from the glass fiber cable in Industrial Craft 2 does lose power over time, and so to make sure that we keep all of our 135 EU per tick going over to our molecular assembler from our nuclear reactor, we are going to use some glass fiber cable. So if we look here at the recipe for the glass fiber cable, all we need is a bunch of glass, some of this energeum dust, as well as some pulverized silver. So let's grab a little bit of pulverized silver, stick that into the pulverizer real quick. Whilst we're waiting for that to pulverize up, let's grab some of our diamond dust as well as some of our redstone. We can craft all of that up into this energium dust. We'll take 36, I guess, for now. I've already started smelting up a little bit of glass in my redstone furnace, so we've got 48 over there. We'll take some silver dust. This probably won't be enough to get it all the way, but it should be enough to get us started. It was 8. It was nowhere near enough to get us all the way, so I'm going to go away. I'm going to make a bunch more of this. I'm going to wire it up, and I'll be back in a second. And a heck of a lot of glass later, boom, we are now connected up to the reactor chamber. I did move the molecular transformer a little bit closer, just so we didn't have to make that much more of this glass fiber cable, but it should now be up and running. It should now be receiving power. And so, if we come over here and grab, say, a bunch of glowstone, I think we only need like 5 of these Solarium. So I put this in here. It is starting to work. It says 135 EU per tick. Progress is currently at 0. By my calculations, at 135 EU per tick, if it needs 9 million EU, it's gonna take about an hour per piece of Solarium that we get, and so 5 hours if we need 5 in total. Let me just check real quick. If 5 is the amount that we need 2 of these. Each one of these needs 1 of these. Ooh, it might be 5 per piece, because we need 1 for this, yeah, and then we need 4 more for that. So we need 10 in total, which means it's going to take 10 hours in order to get all of these up and running. You see, we're 1% there, and so it's going to take quite a while for this to actually finish working. Got a bit of a cool effect, but yeah, that's going to take quite a while. The uranium is going to take quite a while as well. If we come over here, it's been probably about an hour and a half since we actually set this thing up now, and it is, you can see they're getting there. They were a tiny little bit depleted on the end there, but it's going to take a long time for them to actually fully deplete. And so what I'll probably do between episodes is leave the server running, or just leave myself AFK on the server so things keep on happening. But over the next few episodes, we'll probably move away a little bit, do some other stuff, let these machines do their thing, and actually start to get some of the depleted uranium and some of the Solarium. But with that, guys, I'm going to end this episode of Feed the Beast Infinity Evolved Skyblock there. This is going to be a shorter episode than usual. I do apologize, but this episode has taken forever to record already. It's been like 2.5 hours now, just because of how long it's taken to craft all of the stuff for Industrial Craft 2, and if I want this video to go out today, it's gonna have to be a little bit shorter, but rest assured the next one should be normal length. As always, thanks for watching. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like it, really does help out a lot. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys next time.